I woke up choking on blood, and my daughter Melissa stood in the doorway with that smile I'd seen 1,000 times before the one she gave me, when she brought my special smoothies every night. "Morning, Mom," she whispered. "How are you feeling today?" I couldn't answer. My throat was on fire, scarred tissue tearing with every breath. What she didn't know was that I'd finally figured out why I was dying, and the 4K camera I'd installed in my bedroom had caught everything. The police were already building their case, and I had made sure every single feeding bag was preserved as evidence. By the time I was done, my own daughter would spend the rest of her life in prison, and she would know that I watched her try to kill me night after night after night. The morphine drip wasn't working anymore. That's what I told myself at first anyway. It had been 6 weeks since the car accident that left me with a shattered jaw, broken neck vertebrae, and unable to eat solid food. 6 weeks of living in my own bedroom, which had been converted into something resembling a hospital room. 6 weeks of my daughter Melissa moving back home to take care of me after my husband died 3 years ago. 6 weeks of trusting her completely. I should have known better. The pain started around week 3. Not the pain from my injuries I'd gotten used to, that the dull ache of bones knitting back together, the frustration of communicating through a whiteboard because I couldn't speak properly. This was different. This was a burning sensation that started in my throat and radiated down into my chest like someone was pouring acid directly into my esophagus. Dr. Morrison seemed concerned but not alarmed when I wrote about it during his home visit. "Could be reflux from the feeding tube," he said, adjusting his glasses as he examined my throat with a small light. "We'll adjust your medication. These things take time to heal, Margaret." But it got worse, so much worse. By week 4, I was coughing up blood. Not a lot at first, just little flecks in the mucus that I'd spit into tissues Melissa would immediately throw away. She was always so attentive like that, always right there with a fresh tissue, a concerned expression asking if I needed anything. My devoted daughter, my only child, the girl I'd raised alone after her father walked out when she was 6. The woman I'd put through college, helped with her down payment on her first house supported through her divorce 2 years ago. The woman who was killing me. I didn't know it yet, of course. How could I? When you raise a child, when you sacrifice everything for them, when you love them more than your own life, the idea that they might want you dead is so foreign, so impossible, that your brain simply refuses to process it, even when the evidence is literally burning through your throat. "Mom, you're not healing right," Melissa said one evening, her face a mask of concern as she prepared my feeding tube formula. I was propped up in my adjustable hospital bed, the same bed where I'd slept next to my husband for 30 years before cancer took him. Now it was just me, my injuries, and my daughter. "I think we need to call Dr. Morrison again. This bleeding isn't normal." I nodded, wincing at the movement. Everything hurt. The pain medication barely touched it anymore. I watched Melissa pour the chalky formula into the feeding bag, her movements practiced and efficient. She'd learned how to do this from the home health nurse had insisted on taking over all my care to save money. "We don't need those nurses coming here every day," she'd said. "I can do everything they do, and besides, wouldn't you rather have your daughter taking care of you than strangers?" Of course I would. Of course I did. I wrote "thank you" on my whiteboard and showed it to her. She smiled that beautiful smile that reminded me of her as a little girl and kissed my forehead. "Anything for you, Mom?" she whispered. "Anything." She connected the feeding tube, and I felt the cold formula begin its journey into my stomach. Within 15 minutes, the burning would start. Within 30, I'd be in agony. But I didn't know yet that this was intentional. I thought I was just unlucky that my body was rejecting the treatment, that I was a difficult patient with a complicated recovery. I didn't know that my daughter was mixing industrial drain cleaner into my food. It was my neighbor, Patricia, who planted the first seed of doubt. She came to visit on a Saturday afternoon, bringing flowers and magazines. Melissa was out grocery shopping, and Patricia sat beside my bed talking about neighborhood gossip, her grandchildren, the weather, normal things that made me feel almost human again. "You know," she said, lowering her voice, "I saw Melissa at the hardware store last week. She was buying something from behind the counter, something the clerk had to get from the back. She looked I don't know. Nervous. When she saw me, she practically ran out. I frowned and wrote on my whiteboard. Probably nothing. Probably, Patricia agreed, but something in her tone suggested she didn't quite believe it. It's just, Margaret, you're not getting better. You're getting worse. I've known you for 15 years, and I've never seen you look like this. Even after Richard died, even after the accident, you had fight in you. Now you look... She trailed off, tears forming in her eyes. You look like you're dying. The words hit me like a physical blow. Was I dying? I'd been so focused on getting through each day, each hour, each feeding, that I hadn't really looked at the bigger picture, Doctor. Morrison kept saying I should be improving, that my injuries, while serious, weren't life-threatening. The jaw would heal, the vertebrae would stabilize. I should be getting stronger, but I wasn't. I was getting weaker. The bleeding was worse. The pain was unbearable. And now that Patricia mentioned it, Melissa had been acting strange lately. Jumpy. Distracted. Always on her phone, always watching me with these weird expressions I couldn't quite read. After Patricia left, I lay in bed thinking. The afternoon sun filtered through my curtains, casting shadows across the ceiling that I'd memorized over the past weeks. I thought about Melissa, about how quickly she'd agreed to move back home, about how she'd been so insistent about handling all my care herself, about how she'd convinced me to add her name to my bank accounts just in case of emergency, about how she'd suggested I update my will to make things simpler, about the life insurance policy worth $800,000 that would go directly to her. My stomach clenched, and it wasn't from the feeding tube. No, I was being paranoid. This was grief, talking trauma, talking pain, talking. Melissa loved me. Melissa was my daughter. People don't kill their parents. Not loving daughters who cook for them and care for them and cry when they think you're asleep. But what if... The thought, once planted, grew like a weed in my mind. What if Patricia was right? What if there was something wrong beyond my injuries? What if Melissa... No, I couldn't even think it. It was too horrible, too impossible. But what if that night I pretended to sleep when Melissa came in with my evening feeding? Through barely opened eyes, I watched her prepare the bag. Same routine as always. Formula from the can mixed with water poured into the feeding bag. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. See, I told myself, you're being crazy. This is your daughter, your baby girl. Then she reached into her pocket. It was so quick I almost missed it. A small bottle brown glass, no bigger than a travel shampoo container. She glanced at the doorway, then back at the feeding bag. Her hand moved, and I heard a soft glug, glug, glug as she poured something into the formula. She shook the bag gently to mix it, then smiled to herself, a smile I'd never seen before. Not warm, not loving, something else entirely, satisfied. That's what it was. She looked satisfied. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it, but she didn't look at me. She hung the feeding bag on its pole, connected it to my tube, and started the flow. Then she sat down in the chair beside my bed, pulled out her phone, and started scrolling through what looked like real estate listings. The burning started right on schedule. 15 minutes. Like clockwork. But this time I understood. This time I knew it wasn't my body failing to heal. This was intentional. This was deliberate. This was my daughter poisoning me, and from the casual way she was looking at houses on her phone, she'd been doing it for a while. How long? How many nights had I lain here trusting her, loving her, thanking her, while she slowly killed me? I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the feeding tube out and demand answers. I wanted to cry and ask her why, what had I done, how could she do this to me? But I couldn't. My jaw was wired shut, my voice was barely a whisper on good days, and more importantly, if I revealed that I knew she might just finish the job faster. The small bottle in her pocket could contain anything. She could put it in my water, my medication, my IV fluids. I was helpless, bedridden, and completely at her mercy. So I did nothing. I lay there feeling the poison burn through my throat, and I planned. The next morning, after Melissa left for what she said was a quick errand, I managed to pull myself to the edge of the bed. Every movement was agony, but fear is a powerful motivator. I reached for my cell phone on the nightstand, the one Melissa didn't know I'd secretly been charging under my pillow, and I called Patricia. Patricia, I whispered, my voice raw and broken. I need help. Don't tell Melissa. Come now. She was there in 10 minutes, her face pale when she saw me, half collapsed against the bed frame. Margaret, my God. Camera, I whispered. Need camera, she's poisoning me. Patricia didn't question. It didn't tell me I was crazy, didn't waste time with disbelief. She'd seen something at that hardware store, and she believed me. I'll be right back, she said, and she was gone. She returned 30 minutes later with a small box. My son-in-law works in security, she explained, helping me back into bed. This is a 4K camera, motion-activated records to a cloud server. Where do you want it? We decided on the bookshelf across from my bed, hidden behind a framed photo of Melissa as a child. The irony wasn't lost on me. We angled it just right so it would capture anyone standing at my bedside preparing my feeding tube. Patricia helped me set up the app on my phone, showed me how to access the footage remotely, and squeezed my hand. I'm calling the police, she said. No. The word came out stronger than I'd managed in weeks. Not yet. Need proof. Need to catch her. Margaret, please. I gripped her hand. She'll just say I'm confused from the medication. I need video evidence, clear evidence, then police. Patricia looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded. I'm checking on you every day, morning and night. If you don't answer your phone, I'm calling 911. Understand? I understood. That night I waited. The camera was recording. My phone was under my pillow, set to silent but vibrating. Patricia was on standby. And Melissa came in right on schedule, 9 p.m. with my feeding bag and that same gentle smile. How are you feeling, Mom? She asked, all sweetness and concern. You look tired. Did you sleep okay today? I nodded weakly, playing the part of the dying patient. Because that's what she wanted, wasn't it? She wanted me weak, compliant, too sick to question anything, too sick to fight back. She prepared the feeding bag. Same routine. Formula water mixed together, then the glance at the door, the reach into her pocket, the small brown bottle. The camera captured everything. I watched her pour what looked like maybe a tablespoon of clear liquid into my feeding formula. She mixed it carefully, thoroughly, making sure it was fully incorporated. Then she hung the bag, connected it to my tube, and patted my hand. This will help you feel better, she said softly. I promise. The burning started 15 minutes later, right on schedule, but this time I had proof. This time I wasn't crazy. This time I could fight back. I lasted 2 more nights of filming, 2 more nights of watching her poison me through my phone screen, watching her mix that clear liquid into my food, watching her settle into the chair beside my bed, and browse through house listings and vacation packages and new car options, planning her future, my future, the future she was buying with my life insurance money. On the 3rd night, I called Dr. Morrison. Margaret. He sounded concerned. It was 11 p.m. What's wrong? Need toxicology screen, I whispered. Blood test, everything. Don't tell Melissa. There was a long pause. Margaret, are you saying? She's poisoning me. Have proof. Need medical evidence. Can you come tomorrow when she's at work? I'll be there at 10 a.m., he said immediately. I'm also calling a colleague of mine, a forensic toxicologist. If someone is doing what you're saying, we need to document everything properly. Thank you, I breathed. Margaret, Dr. Morrison's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. If this is true, if someone has been deliberately harming you while you're in this vulnerable state, we're not just talking about assault. This is attempted murder. Do you understand? I understood. God help me, I understood. My daughter was trying to murder me. Dr. Morrison arrived the next morning with Dr. Sarah Chen, a forensic toxicologist from the University Hospital. Melissa was at her job, the job she'd kept throughout all of this, only taking time off for my appointments. The job that gave her the perfect alibi. The caring daughter who was sacrificing so much, working full-time and still finding time to care for her invalid mother. Everyone thought she was a saint. Dr. Chen was thorough and professional. She drew multiple vials of blood, took samples of my saliva, examined my throat with a specialized camera that made me gag and cry. She bagged the feeding tube, took swabs of the equipment, and photographed my injuries. The scarring in your throat is consistent with chemical burns, she said quietly, her dark eyes angry behind her professional demeanor. "Repeated chemical burns. Margaret, this is severe. You're lucky to be alive." "What is it?" I whispered. "What is she using?" Dr. Chen glanced at Dr. Morrison, then back at me. "I can't say for certain until we run the full panel, but based on the pattern of damage, the progression of symptoms, and the burning sensation you've described, if I had to guess, I'd say we're looking at some kind of caustic substance. Drain cleaner, oven cleaner, something with a high pH that would cause this type of injury, but might not be immediately lethal in small doses." Small doses. She'd been giving me small doses so I'd die slowly, so it would look like complications from my accident, so no one would suspect. "We need to involve the police," Dr. Morrison said firmly. "Today. Right now." "I have video," I told them, pulling out my phone with shaking hands. 3 nights, clear footage. "And Patricia witnessed." "She knows." Dr. Chen took my phone gently. "I'm going to make copies of these files. They'll need to be part of the evidence chain. Margaret, I know this is your daughter, and I know that makes this impossibly hard, but you understand, we have to report this right. This isn't just about protecting you. If she's willing to do this to her own mother, there's no telling what else she might be capable of." I nodded, tears finally breaking through. My daughter, my baby girl, the child I'd rocked to sleep, taught to read, cheered for at soccer games held, when she cried over her first heartbreak, the woman I'd trusted with my life, and she'd been killing me. Detective Rachel Walsh arrived an hour later with her partner, Detective Marcus Thompson. They were both in their 40s, professional but kind, and they didn't waste time with skepticism. "Mrs. Henderson," Detective Walsh said, sitting beside my bed, "Dr. Chen has briefed us on your medical condition and her preliminary findings. We've also reviewed the video footage. I want you to know that we take this extremely seriously. What we need from you now is everything, every detail you can remember, every strange thing you noticed, everything." So I told them. About Patricia seeing Melissa at the hardware store, about the small brown bottle, about how the pain started around week 3, about the life insurance policy, about Melissa asking to be added to my bank accounts, about how she'd been looking at houses and cars and vacations, about how she'd seemed so eager to take over all my care to send the nurses away to keep me isolated. "She's been stealing from you too," Detective Thompson said, scrolling through his tablet. "We pulled your financial records with your permission. Dr. Morrison got us the authorization. There have been multiple large withdrawals over the past 6 weeks, transfers to accounts in your daughter's name. Did you authorize these?" I shook my head, feeling sick. Of course she had. Of course. Why slowly poison me for the insurance money when she could take my actual money right now? "There's been approximately $200,000 moved out of your accounts," he continued. "The transfers were done through online banking, and they're labeled as gifts or family assistance. Did you give her access to your online banking?" Another shake of my head. But I knew how she'd done it. I'd written down my passwords in a notebook in my nightstand drawer, for emergencies, in case something happened to me. She'd found them and helped herself. Detective Walsh leaned forward. "Mrs. Henderson, we want to catch her in the act. Red-handed. Undeniable proof. Are you willing to let her do this one more time with us present to witness it?" The thought of letting her poison me again, even with police present, made my stomach turn. But I understood why they needed it. Video could be questioned. Medical evidence could be explained away by a good lawyer. But police witnessing attempted murder, that was ironclad. "Where?" I whispered. "Hide where?" Detective Thompson surveyed the room. "Your closet is large enough for 2 people. We'll be right there. The moment she adds anything to your feeding bag, we'll intervene before you're connected to it. You won't ingest anything, I promise." "When?" "Tonight," Detective Walsh said. "We'll be here by 8 p.m. Your neighbor Patricia has agreed to help coordinate. She'll text you when she sees Melissa arrive home from work, and we'll already be in position. All you have to do is act normal." "Can you do that?" Could I lie in bed pretending everything was fine while police officers hid in my closet waiting to arrest my daughter for trying to kill me? Could I look at Melissa's face knowing what she'd done and not scream or cry or demand to know why I had to? Because if I didn't, she'd get away with it. She'd inherit everything and she'd probably do it to someone else someday. People who can kill their own mothers don't suddenly develop a conscience. Yes, I whispered. I can do it. The rest of the day was surreal. Dr. Chen finished collecting evidence. Dr. Morrison examined me one more time and started me on medication to help heal the chemical burns in my throat. The detectives went over the plan again and again, making sure I understood what would happen. Patricia came by to check on me, squeezing my hand and promising everything would be okay. Then they all left, and I was alone with my thoughts and the camera on the bookshelf and the terrible knowledge that my daughter wanted me dead. Melissa came home at 6 p.m., cheerful and chatty. "Hey, Mom, sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible." She kissed my forehead like she always did, and I had to fight every instinct not to flinch away. "How are you feeling?" "You look better today. Maybe you're finally turning a corner." I managed a weak smile and wrote on my whiteboard, "Hope so." "Me too," she said. And the scary thing was she sounded sincere, like she actually believed she was helping me. Or maybe she was just that good at lying. "I'm going to make myself some dinner. Do you need anything before your feeding?" I shook my head. She smiled and left, and I heard her in the kitchen humming something cheerful while she cooked. My daughter. My murderer. How do you reconcile those two things? At 8 p.m., Patricia texted, "They're in position." I knew Detective Walsh and Detective Thompson were in my closet, hidden behind my winter coats and old boxes, their phones on silent cameras ready. I knew Dr. Chen was standing by at the hospital, ready to process whatever evidence they collected. I knew this was necessary. But when Melissa walked in at 9 p.m. with my feeding bag and that same gentle smile, I wanted to scream. "Ready for dinner, Mom?" she asked brightly, setting up the equipment. She was wearing a soft pink sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked so normal, so harmless. I nodded, my heart pounding so hard I was sure she could see it through my hospital gown. She prepared the formula, same routine. I watched her hands move, mixing the powder with water, pouring it into the bag. Normal. Normal. All normal. Then she glanced at the door. That telltale glance. The habit she'd developed over the past 6 weeks, making sure no one was watching, making sure she was alone with me. She reached into her pocket. The small brown bottle came out, and this time I could see the label, or rather the lack of one. It had been peeled off, leaving only sticky residue. Smart. No traceable purchases if someone happened to find it. She unscrewed the cap, tilted the bottle over the feeding bag, started to pour. "Police don't move." The closet doors flew open, and Detective Walsh and Detective Thompson emerged with their badges held high. Melissa jumped, dropping the bottle. It hit the floor and rolled under my bed, leaving a trail of clear liquid that smoked faintly where it touched the hardwood. What are you, Mom?" Melissa looked at me, confusion and fear warring on her face. "What's going on? Who are these people?" "Melissa Henderson, you're under arrest for attempted murder," Detective Walsh said, already moving forward with handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent. Attempted murder. Are you insane? I'm taking care of my mother. She's sick. She needs me." Melissa's voice rose to a shriek as Detective Thompson retrieved the bottle from under my bed, carefully sealing it in an evidence bag. "This is crazy, Mom. Tell them I've been helping you." I couldn't speak. My voice was gone, burned away by the poison she'd been feeding me, but I could write. I grabbed my whiteboard with shaking hands and wrote 4 words. "You were killing me." The color drained from Melissa's face. No, I wasn't. I was giving you your medicine, your supplements, things to help you heal. Mom, you're confused. The pain medication. "Save it," Detective Walsh said, clicking the handcuffs into place. "We have video footage. 3 nights of you adding an unknown substance to your mother's feeding tube. We have her medical records showing chemical burns consistent with caustic poisoning. And now we have you caught in the act with what appears to be industrial drain cleaner." "It's not... I wasn't..." Melissa was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "Mom, please tell them this is a mistake. I love you. I'd never hurt you. You know that. You know I'd never hurt you. But I did know. I knew exactly what she'd been doing and why. I wrote on my whiteboard again. My bank account, my insurance. You took everything. Something changed in Melissa's face then. The tears stopped. The fear faded. What replaced it was cold, calculating, and utterly devoid of love. You were taking too long to die, she said flatly. The accident should have killed you, but you survived. Fine. I could work with that. But then you just kept hanging on. Week after week spending thousands on medical care, draining your accounts on doctors and equipment and medication. Do you know how much this whole setup costs? You were burning through my inheritance. Your inheritance, Detective Thompson repeated. Mrs. Henderson is still alive. Barely, Melissa sneered. Melissa. She was almost gone. Another few weeks and it would have been over. Natural causes, complications from the accident. No one would have questioned it. But no, she had to go and ruin everything, had to start suspecting. You always were too smart for your own good, Mom. I stared at my daughter, this stranger wearing my child's face, and I didn't recognize her. When had this happened? When had she become this person, or had she always been this way, and I'd just been too blind to see it? Melissa Henderson, Detective Walsh said, steering her toward the door. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. I strongly suggest you stop talking right now. But Melissa wasn't done. As they walked her out of my bedroom, she looked back at me one last time, and her smile was poison. You're going to die anyway, you know. You're old, you're sick, you're broken. I was just speeding up the inevitable. And when you do finally kick it, I'll still get everything. I'm your only child. Who else would you leave it to? Then she was gone, her voice echoing down the hallway as she argued with the detectives, insisting this was all a misunderstanding, that she was the victim here, that her mother was mentally ill and making false accusations. Patricia appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She rushed to my bedside and wrapped her arms around me as gently as she could. It's over, she whispered. She can't hurt you anymore. It's over. But it wasn't over. Not really. This was just the beginning. Dr. Chen arrived shortly after to collect the bottle and take samples of the feeding formula that Melissa had prepared. Under the harsh lights, we could see that the liquid inside the bottle was slightly viscous, with a faint chemical smell that made my eyes water even from several feet away. Sodium hydroxide, Dr. Chen confirmed after a quick field test. Concentration of around 30%. This is industrial strength drain cleaner. Mrs. Henderson, if you'd been connected to this feeding bag tonight... She trailed off, but I understood. I would have died. Not eventually, not after weeks of slow poisoning. Tonight would have been the end. She escalated, Detective Walsh observed, taking notes. The previous doses were causing damage, but not enough to kill quickly. She was getting impatient, or worried that you were catching on. This concentration would have been lethal within hours, maybe less. I spent that night in the hospital. Dr. Chen insisted, and honestly, I didn't want to go back to that bedroom anyway. Not yet. Maybe not ever. They put me in a private room and started aggressive treatment for the chemical burns in my throat and esophagus. The damage was extensive. Weeks of small doses had created scarring that would take months to heal if it ever fully healed at all. You're lucky, Dr. Chen told me the next morning, reviewing my test results. The toxicology screen confirms sodium hydroxide in your bloodstream, along with tissue samples showing repeated exposure. If she'd continued for another week or two, the scarring would have been irreversible. You would have needed reconstructive surgery just to be able to swallow. And that final dose she tried to give you last night, Margaret, that would have perforated your esophagus completely. You would have bled out internally within hours. I couldn't respond. My throat was too damaged, too raw. They'd given me a voice synthesizer, a small electronic device that I could type into, and it would speak for me. It felt wrong, robotic, but at least I could communicate. How long? I typed. The electronic voice asked, how long until I can speak normally again? Dr. Chen's expression was sympathetic, but honest. Months, maybe 6, maybe more. We'll need to do regular endoscopies to monitor the healing, speech therapy, possibly surgery if the scarring doesn't improve with treatment. Your daughter did serious lasting damage, Margaret. My daughter. The words still didn't feel real. I kept expecting to wake up and find this was all some horrible nightmare brought on by pain medication. But it wasn't. It was real. Melissa had really tried to kill me. My baby girl, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, had measured out poison and mixed it into my food night after night, watching me suffer, waiting for me to die. Why? That was the question that haunted me. Why would she do this? Detective Walsh came by that afternoon with some answers, and they made everything so much worse. "We've been going through Melissa's financial records and digital footprint," she said, settling into the chair beside my hospital bed. Patricia was there too, having barely left my side since the arrest. "Margaret, your daughter has been planning this for a long time, possibly years." I typed years. We found searches on her laptop dating back almost 2 years. How to cause slow poisoning. Untraceable poisons. How to fake caring for an elderly parent. Symptoms of complications from neck injuries. How life insurance payouts work. She'd been researching this long before your accident. The room spun. 2 years. She'd been planning to kill me for 2 years. The accident hadn't been the trigger. It had just been an opportunity. "There's more." Detective Walsh continued, her voice gentle but firm. "We found emails between Melissa and a man named Derek Thornton. He's a contractor, owns a small construction company. They've been seeing each other for about 3 years, since before Melissa's divorce was even finalized." Patricia gasped. "She was cheating." "Yes, and according to their emails, Derek didn't know Melissa was still married at first. By the time he found out, he was already invested in the relationship. They've been planning a future together, a very expensive future. There are emails about buying a beach house in the Bahamas, starting a charter boat business, early retirement, all of it funded by your life insurance money, Margaret." I felt sick. The feeding tube in my stomach seemed to burn, even though nothing was going through it. Melissa hadn't just been killing me for money. She'd been killing me to fund a fantasy life with her boyfriend. "Does he know," I typed, "about the poisoning?" Detective Walsh hesitated. "We're still investigating that. The emails don't explicitly discuss the method, but there are some concerning exchanges. Derek would ask, 'How much longer?' and Melissa would respond things like, 'She's getting weaker,' or 'Any day now.' Whether he knew exactly what she was doing or just knew she was waiting for you to die, we're not sure yet, but he's definitely complicit on some level." "We're bringing him in for questioning," Detective Thompson added, appearing in the doorway. "His lawyer is already trying to claim he had no knowledge of any wrongdoing, that he thought your daughter was just a caretaker waiting for a natural death. But those emails paint a different picture." Over the next few days, the story got worse and worse. They found the hardware store receipt for the drain cleaner purchased 6 weeks ago, the same day Patricia had seen Melissa there. They found a journal in Melissa's apartment hidden in a locked drawer, documenting every dose she'd given me. She'd been tracking my symptoms, my pain levels, my decline, like a scientist conducting an experiment. Day 18. Increased dose to 2 tablespoons. Subject coughing blood. Good progress. Day 25. Subject complained to doctor, but no investigation launched. Dr. Morrison suspects reflux. Perfect. Day 31. Subject very weak now. Might only be another week or 2. Derek says the boat is still available if we move fast. Subject. She'd called me subject. Not mom, not mother. Subject. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Linda Martinez, came to see me on day 4. She laid out her case with clinical precision, and it was overwhelming. "Mrs. Henderson, we have video evidence of your daughter administering poison. We have her journal documenting the poisoning. We have her internet search history. We have her financial motive. We have the medical evidence of your injuries. We have her confession, which she gave to police officers before her lawyer arrived and shut her down. This is one of the strongest attempted murder cases I've seen in 20 years." I typed, "Good. Very good. But I need you to understand something. Your daughter's lawyer is going to try to paint you as a confused, medicated patient who misunderstood her daughter's care. They're going to say the journal was creative writing, that the searches were for a novel she was writing, that the confession was coerced, that you're bitter because she had to institutionalize you. Institutionalize, Patricia practically shouted. Margaret is in her own home. I know, but they're going to argue she was considering it, that you were difficult combative, that you'd become a burden. They're going to try to make Melissa the victim here. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and fierce. After everything she'd done, Melissa was going to claim victimhood. She was going to say I was the problem. I typed furiously. I want to testify in court. I want to tell them what she did. Linda Martinez smiled grimly. I was hoping you'd say that. Margaret, your testimony will be crucial, but you need to be prepared. Melissa's lawyer is going to come at you hard. They're going to question your memory, your mental state, your medications. Are you ready for that? Yes, the synthesizer said. Then I typed more. She tried to kill me. She doesn't get to walk away. The preliminary hearing was set for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, I stayed at Patricia's house because I couldn't bear to go back to my own home. Everything there reminded me of Melissa. Her childhood photos on the walls, her old bedroom preserved exactly as she'd left it when she moved out at 22, the kitchen where I'd taught her to bake cookies, the garden where we'd planted flowers together every spring. All of it was tainted now. All of those memories were poisoned, just like she'd poisoned me. Patricia was amazing. She helped me with my medications, my physical therapy, my feeding tube care, but she did it differently than Melissa had. She talked to me, included me, asked my opinion. She treated me like a person, not a subject. The difference was stark and painful. Did you know, I asked her one afternoon using the synthesizer. We were sitting in her sunroom, afternoon light streaming through the windows. Did you ever suspect she was capable of this? Patricia was quiet for a long moment. I thought she was self-centered, she finally said. After her divorce, when she'd come visit you, I noticed she talked mostly about herself, her problems, her needs, her wants. You'd try to talk about your life and she'd just redirect the conversation back to her. But capable of murder? No, Margaret. I never imagined that. I don't think anyone did. She fooled everyone, the synthesizer said. She fooled you most of all, and that's not your fault. Parents want to believe the best of their children. It's natural. It's love. But where had my love gotten me? Lying in a hospital bed with chemical burns in my throat and a feeding tube in my stomach. My daughter had taken my love and twisted it into a weapon she could use against me. The preliminary hearing arrived too quickly and not quickly enough. I was nervous, terrified even, but also angry. I wanted to face Melissa. I wanted her to see that I'd survived, that her plan had failed, that I wasn't going to be another statistic. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined from TV shows. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the judge's bench imposing at the front. I sat in the witness area with Linda Martinez, my synthesizer in my lap, Patricia beside me for support. Then they brought Melissa in. She was wearing a conservative navy suit, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked younger than her 34 years, vulnerable almost. Her lawyer had clearly coached her on appearance. She didn't look at me at first, just kept her eyes down, her hands folded in her lap. The perfect picture of a wrongly accused woman. But when she finally did glance my way, just for a second, I saw it. That cold calculation, that assessment of whether I was still a threat, and I knew this wasn't over. Even caught, even facing decades in prison, Melissa was still plotting, still planning, still looking for angles. All rise, the bailiff called, and Judge Catherine Reynolds entered. She was in her 60s, gray hair, sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. She reviewed the file in front of her, then looked up. This is a preliminary hearing for the case of the state versus Melissa Henderson. Ms. Henderson is charged with attempted murder in the first-degree assault with a deadly weapon, elder abuse, and financial exploitation. Ms. Martinez, you may present your opening statement. Linda Martinez stood, and her voice was clear and strong. Your Honor, this case involves a daughter who, motivated by greed and impatience, systematically poisoned her disabled mother over the course of 6 weeks. We have video evidence of the defendant adding industrial drain cleaner to her mother's feeding tube. We have medical evidence showing the severe chemical burns this caused. We have the defendant's own journal documenting her crimes. And we have her confession given to police officers at the scene of her arrest. Melissa's lawyer, a man named Robert Chen, stood for his turn. Your Honor, my client is a devoted daughter who sacrificed her own life to care for her ailing mother. The so-called evidence is circumstantial at best and the result of a confused, heavily medicated woman's paranoid delusions. My client has never had so much as a parking ticket. The idea that she would suddenly become a calculating murderer is absurd. Judge Reynolds looked unimpressed. Mr. Chen, if the evidence is, as the prosecution describes, I'm not sure absurd is the word I'd use. But that's what this hearing will determine. Ms. Martinez, call your first witness. The prosecution calls Dr. Sarah Chen. Dr. Chen took the stand and was sworn in. Linda Martinez walked her through the medical findings, and it was damning. The chemical burns, the scarring, the toxicology results showing sodium hydroxide in my system, the analysis of the bottle found at the scene, which contained drain cleaner at a concentration that would have been lethal if ingested. In your professional opinion, Linda asked, could these injuries have been accidental? No, Dr. Chen said firmly. The pattern of injury is consistent with repeated, deliberate exposure to a caustic substance. The concentration found in the bottle recovered at the scene was industrial strength, not something found in household cleaning products. And the defendant's own documentation of doses and symptoms proves this was intentional and systematic. Robert Chen tried to shake her on cross-examination. Dr. Chen, isn't it possible that Mrs. Henderson's injuries were caused by complications from her accident, that the feeding tube itself caused irritation that became infected? No, Dr. Chen replied. Feeding tube complications present very differently. These are chemical burns caused by a high pH substance. There's no other medical explanation. But Mrs. Henderson was on multiple pain medications. Wasn't she morphine, oxycodone drugs that can cause confusion, paranoia, even hallucinations? Mrs. Henderson's mental faculties were and are intact. Her pain medication was administered at therapeutic doses and would not cause the kind of sustained delusion you're suggesting. Nothing further, Robert Chen said, sitting down. He looked frustrated, which gave me a small surge of satisfaction. Next came Detective Walsh. She walked the judge through the arrest, the video evidence, the journal, the internet searches. She played clips from the videos I'd taken, and watching them again, seeing Melissa pour that poison into my food while I lay helpless in bed, made me feel physically ill. The defendant was caught in the act, Detective Walsh testified. We witnessed her adding a clear liquid from an unmarked bottle to her mother's feeding bag. When confronted, she initially denied it, then tried to claim she was adding supplements. But the bottle contained sodium hydroxide at a concentration of approximately 30%. And the defendant's statement after arrest, Linda prompted. Detective Walsh consulted her notes. The defendant stated, and I quote, "You were taking too long to die. The accident should have killed you, but you survived. Fine. I could work with that. But then you just kept hanging on, week after week, spending thousands on medical care, draining your accounts on doctors and equipment and medication. Do you know how much this whole setup costs? You were burning through my inheritance." The courtroom was silent. Even Robert Chen looked uncomfortable. That confession given before he'd arrived to advise his client to shut up was probably the nail in Melissa's coffin. Your Honor, Linda said, the prosecution also has financial records showing that the defendant transferred over $200,000 from her mother's accounts to her own accounts in the 6 weeks between the accident and the arrest. She also took out credit cards in her mother's name and charged over $50,000 to them. Judge Reynolds looked at Melissa with something approaching disgust. Ms. Henderson, did you transfer funds from your mother's accounts? Robert Chen stood quickly. Your Honor, my client declines to answer on the advice of counsel. Of course she does, Judge Reynolds said dryly. Ms. Martinez, do you have more witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Margaret Henderson. This was it. My moment. Patricia helped me to the witness stand carrying my synthesizer. The bailiff looked uncertain about how to swear me in with my inability to speak, but we worked it out. I placed my hand on the Bible and listened to the words, then sat down my daughter just a few feet away from me. Linda Martinez approached gently. Mrs. Henderson, I know this is difficult. Can you tell the court in your own words what happened? I typed slowly, letting the synthesizer speak for me. The robotic voice felt wrong for such emotional testimony, but it was all I had. My daughter moved in to care for me after my accident. I trusted her completely. Around week 3, I started experiencing severe burning pain in my throat. My doctor thought it was complications from the feeding tube. When did you begin to suspect something was wrong? My neighbor told me she saw Melissa buying something at the hardware store. She looked nervous. That night I pretended to sleep and watched Melissa prepare my feeding. She added something from a small brown bottle. After that, I knew. What did you do? I set up a camera. I recorded 3 nights of her poisoning me. Then I called the police. Linda nodded. Can you identify the person who poisoned you? I looked directly at Melissa for the first time since taking the stand. Her face was blank, carefully neutral, but her eyes were cold. I typed, my daughter Melissa Henderson. Did you ever give her permission to add anything to your feeding tube besides prescribed formula? No. Did you give her permission to transfer money from your accounts? No. Did you change your will to leave everything to her? No. My will was made years ago. It's split between multiple charities and Melissa. She would have received about 1/3 of my estate plus the life insurance. How much is the life insurance policy? $800,000. There was a murmur in the courtroom. That was a serious motive for murder. Linda returned to her table and picked up a document. Your Honor, I'd like to enter into evidence this journal recovered from the defendant's apartment. It documents every dose of poison administered, the resulting symptoms, and plans for how to spend the inheritance money. She handed it to me. Mrs. Henderson, can you read the entry from day 31? I opened to the marked page and typed the words, my hands shaking. The synthesizer read them aloud in its flat, emotionless tone, which somehow made them even more chilling. Day 31. Subject very weak now. Might only be another week or 2. Derek says the boat is still available if we move fast. Called insurance company to verify payout procedure. They said 2 to 4 weeks after death certificate. Should have money by midsummer. Finally free. Subject, Linda repeated. She called you subject, not mother. She was tracking your death like a science experiment. And who is Derek? Her boyfriend. I didn't know about him. Were you aware that your daughter was planning to use your life insurance money to buy a boat and start a business with this man? No. Robert Chen finally stood for cross-examination. He approached me carefully, his expression sympathetic. Mrs. Henderson, I'm sorry for your suffering. Truly. But I have to ask you some difficult questions. I waited. You were on significant pain medication during this time, correct? Morphine and oxycodone? Yes. And you'd just lost your husband 3 years ago, then suffered a serious accident. You were in pain, isolated, dependent on others. Isn't it possible that you misinterpreted your daughter's care? That in your pain and medication-induced confusion, you saw malice where there was only concern? I typed carefully. I have video evidence, medical evidence, her journal, her confession. This isn't confusion. This is attempted murder. But the video only shows her adding something to your feeding bag. It doesn't show what that substance is. The police tested it, drain cleaner. And you're certain she knew what it was? Isn't it possible she thought it was a supplement, something to help you? She documented every dose. She tracked my symptoms. She confessed to police. She said I was burning through her inheritance. Robert Chen looked frustrated. Mrs. Henderson, you and Melissa had a complicated relationship, didn't you? She'd recently gone through a difficult divorce. She needed your help, your support. Isn't it possible that in your own health crisis you resented her neediness, that you projected your frustrations onto her? I felt anger surge through me, hot and fierce. I typed fast, almost jabbing at the keys. She poisoned me. For 6 weeks she mixed drain cleaner into my food and watched me suffer. She burned my throat so badly I can't speak. She stole $200,000 from me. She planned to take my life insurance money and buy a boat with her boyfriend. This isn't resentment or projection. This is attempted murder by my own daughter. Nothing further, Robert Chen said quietly, returning to his seat. He knew he hadn't made a dent in my testimony. Judge Reynolds looked at both lawyers. Anything else? The prosecution rests your honor, Linda said. The defense would like to call Melissa Henderson to the stand, Robert Chen announced. I watched my daughter stand and walk to the witness stand. She moved slowly, deliberately, like she was approaching a funeral. Her lawyer had coached her well. She looked fragile, wounded, a victim of circumstance rather than a calculating would-be murderer. When she placed her hand on the Bible, her fingers trembled just slightly. I wondered if that was real or another performance. Please state your name for the record, the bailiff said. Melissa Ann Henderson. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. Nothing like the cold, hard tone she'd used when she told me I was burning through her inheritance. Robert Chen stood and gave her an encouraging smile. Melissa, can you tell the court about your relationship with your mother? I love my mother, Melissa said, and tears welled in her eyes. I've always loved her. She raised me alone after my father left. She sacrificed everything for me. When she had her accident, I didn't even think twice. I quit my job, moved back home, dedicated myself to her care, because that's what you do for family. You quit your job? Robert Chen asked. Not entirely. I went part-time. I needed some income, but I structured my schedule so I could be home with her as much as possible. Linda Martinez was already making notes. I knew what she was thinking, because I was thinking it too. Melissa hadn't quit her job. She'd kept working full-time. She'd lied just now under oath, and it was such an easy lie to disprove. Tell us about your mother's condition after the accident, Robert Chen prompted. Melissa dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. It was terrible. She was in so much pain. The doctors had her on heavy medication, but it barely helped. She couldn't speak, couldn't eat, couldn't do anything for herself. I had to do everything. Feed her through the tube, manage her medications, help her to the bathroom, keep her clean. It was exhausting, but I did it because I love her. And during this time, did you ever try to harm your mother? No. Melissa's voice was firm now, her tears drying up. Never. Not once. Everything I did was to help her heal, to make her comfortable. I researched supplements that might aid recovery. I adjusted her feeding schedule based on when she seemed most able to tolerate it. I monitored her symptoms and reported everything to Dr. Morrison. The prosecution has presented video evidence showing you adding something to your mother's feeding bag. Can you explain that? Those were supplements, Melissa said. Liquid vitamins, minerals, things that might help with healing. I know I should have told the doctor, but I was trying to help. I read online that certain supplements could reduce inflammation and promote tissue repair. Did you know that what you were adding was drain cleaner? Of course not. Melissa looked horrified. I would never. How could anyone think I would do that to my own mother? The bottle I had was labeled as a vitamin supplement. I ordered it online from a health website. If it was actually drain cleaner, then I was lied to, scammed by whoever sold it to me. It was a good story, plausible even if you ignored all the other evidence. But I could see Judge Reynolds wasn't buying it. Her expression remained skeptical, her eyes sharp. What about the journal? Robert Chen asked. The prosecution claims you were documenting the poisoning. That wasn't real, Melissa said quickly. I've been trying to write a novel for years. It's about a murder mystery, a woman who kills her mother for inheritance money. I was taking notes working out the plot. I never imagined anyone would find it and think it was real. It's fiction, just fiction. And the internet searches about poisoning, research for the novel. I wanted it to be realistic, so I looked up actual methods. That's what writers do. They research. It doesn't mean I was actually planning to do any of it. What about the money transfers from your mother's accounts? Melissa's expression turned sad. Mom gave me access to her accounts before the accident. She wanted me to be able to handle her bills if something happened to her. After the accident, I used that access to pay for her medical care, her medications, her equipment. Everything I transferred was for her benefit. $200,000, Robert Chen said. That seems like a significant amount. Medical care is expensive. The home hospital equipment alone was thousands. Her medications, the visiting nurses before I took over her ongoing doctor appointments. It adds up quickly. I kept receipts for everything. Linda Martinez made another note. I knew she'd be checking those receipts, and I'd bet money that they wouldn't add up to anything close to $200,000. Let's talk about the night of your arrest, Robert Chen said. Can you walk us through what happened? I came into Mom's room at 9 p.m., like I always did, to give her the evening feeding. I prepared the formula exactly as I'd been taught. I added the supplement, the one I thought was vitamins, and then suddenly police officers burst out of the closet screaming at me. I was terrified. I didn't understand what was happening. They were treating me like a criminal, and all I'd done was care for my mother. You made some statements that night that the prosecution has characterized as a confession. Can you explain those? Melissa nodded, fresh tears flowing. I was in shock, terrified. They were accusing me of trying to murder my mother, and nothing I said seemed to matter. I think I said something like, she was taking a long time to recover, or the medical bills were piling up. But they've twisted my words to make it sound like I wanted her dead. I didn't. I don't. I just wanted her to get better, and it was taking so long, and I was exhausted and scared and worried about money. That's all I meant. Thank you, Melissa, Robert Chen said gently. Your witness, Ms. Martinez. Linda Martinez stood slowly. She picked up the journal, the bottle of drain cleaner in its evidence bag, and Melissa's bank statements. She approached the witness stand with the calm confidence of a prosecutor who knew she had the truth on her side. Ms. Henderson, you testified that you quit your job to care for your mother. Is that correct? I went part-time, Melissa corrected. Actually, according to your employer at Riverside Insurance, you continued working 40 hours per week throughout your mother's recovery. You never reduced your hours at all. So that was a lie, wasn't it? Melissa's face flushed. I meant I quit my overtime. I was working 50 hours before. Your timesheets show you worked 40 hours before the accident and 40 hours after. No change. So you lied under oath just now. Yes or no? I misremembered. Convenient. Let's talk about these supplements you claim to have been giving your mother. You said you ordered them online from a health website. Which website? I don't remember. You don't remember where you bought something you were putting into your disabled mother's feeding tube. It was weeks ago. I've been through a traumatic arrest. I can't remember every detail. Can you show us the order confirmation email, the receipt? Any proof that you actually ordered supplements? I must have deleted it. And of course you did. But you didn't delete your searches for how to poison someone slowly, or symptoms of caustic poisoning, or can drain cleaner be traced. Those are still on your laptop. If you were researching for a novel, why didn't you search for things like how to write a murder mystery, or plot structure, or anything actually related to writing? I did search for those things, just at a different time. Show me. Show the court one search on your laptop related to actually writing a novel. Melissa was silent. You can't, can you? Because you weren't writing a novel. You were planning a murder. Your mother's murder. Linda held up the journal. Let's look at this fiction you claim you were writing. Page 1. Day 1. First dose administered. Subject showed no immediate symptoms. That's not how novels start, Ms. Henderson. That's how scientific logs start. That's documentation. It's a unique narrative style, Melissa said, but her voice wavered. Day 18. Increased dose to 2 tablespoons. Subject coughing blood. Good progress. Good progress toward what? If this is fiction? If this is a novel? Why are you celebrating your character's suffering? The narrator is unreliable. It's a literary device. Page 47. Derek says the boat is still available if we move fast. Derek is your boyfriend, correct? Yes. And you were planning to buy a boat with him using your mother's life insurance money. That's not fiction. That's a real person, a real boat, a real plan. Derek and I talked about buying a boat someday. It was a dream. That doesn't mean I was killing my mother to make it happen. Linda flipped through more pages. Day 25. Subject complained to doctor, but no investigation launched. Dr. Morrison suspects reflux. Perfect. Why is it perfect that your mother's doctor doesn't investigate her worsening symptoms? What kind of daughter celebrates that? I wasn't celebrating. The narrator was. It's fiction. So when you wrote, finally getting somewhere, another week and I'll be free, that was fiction too. Yes. And when you wrote, Mom's always been a burden, now she's finally going to be useful. That was your fictional narrator, not you. Melissa's composure was cracking. I was exploring dark themes. Writers do that. You keep saying that. Let's explore another dark theme. These bank transfers. You said you used your mother's money for her medical care. I have the receipts you provided. They total $47,000. Where's the other $153,000? There were other expenses, food utilities, home modifications. Your mother's bank records show you paid $3,000 to a travel agency for a Caribbean cruise. Was that for her medical care? That was a mistake. I was going to cancel it. You paid $15,000 as a deposit on a boat called Lucky Lady. Medical care. Derek did that. He had access to my accounts. Oh, so now it's Derek's fault. A minute ago you said all the money went to medical expenses. Which is it? I got confused. You're lying. Just like you lied about quitting your job. Just like you're lying about the supplements. Just like you're lying about the journal being fiction. You poisoned your mother for 6 weeks. You documented every dose. You stole her money. You planned to kill her and run away with your boyfriend. And when you got caught, you made up this ridiculous story about writing a novel. That's not true. Melissa's voice rose, losing that soft, wounded quality. She's old. She was dying anyway. The accident destroyed her quality of life. I was doing her a favor. The courtroom went silent. Melissa's eyes widened as she realized what she'd just said. Robert Chen dropped his head into his hands. Judge Reynolds leaned forward, her expression hard. A favor, Linda repeated softly. You were doing your mother a favor by burning her throat with drain cleaner. I didn't mean it like that, Melissa stammered. I meant that if she had died from the accident, it would have been a mercy. She was in so much pain, I didn't want her to suffer. So you made her suffer more. For 6 weeks, you watched her cough up blood and scream in agony and beg for help, and that was mercy. I gave her pain medication. You gave her poison. You gave her industrial drain cleaner in doses calculated to cause maximum suffering while delaying death long enough for you to steal her money. Linda's voice was sharp, now cutting. And the only reason you're sitting here instead of planning your victim's funeral is because she was smart enough to catch you. She ruined everything, Melissa shouted, and now the mask was completely off. The soft, wounded daughter was gone. In her place was the woman I'd seen that night, cold and calculating and full of rage. I had it all planned out. Everything was perfect. Another week and she would have been gone and I would have been free. Free from her constant neediness, her expectations, her judgment. Free to live my life with Derek, to finally have something that was mine. But she couldn't just die quietly like she was supposed to. She had to go and spy on me, trap me, ruin everything. The courtroom erupted. Robert Chen was trying to get Melissa to stop talking. Judge Reynolds was banging her gavel. Linda Martinez was standing there with a look of grim satisfaction. Patricia grabbed my hand and squeezed hard. I felt tears running down my face, but I didn't know if they were from grief or relief or vindication. Order, Judge Reynolds shouted. Order in this court! She looked at Melissa with unconcealed disgust. Ms. Henderson, you have just confessed to attempted murder in open court. Do you understand that— Melissa seemed to deflate. The anger drained out of her, replaced by desperation. No, I didn't mean that. I didn't mean— I'm upset, I'm confused, I didn't try to kill anyone, I was just venting frustration. You said, and I quote, another week, and she would have been gone. Gone where? If you were just caring for your mother, why would she be gone? I meant recovered, gone from the hospital bed, back to normal. No one believes that, Judge Reynolds said flatly. Ms. Henderson, based on the evidence presented here today, including your own testimony and spontaneous confession, I am binding you over for trial on all charges. Bail is denied. You will remain in custody until trial. No. Melissa lunged forward, but the bailiff caught her. You can't do this. She's lying. My mother is lying. She's always been jealous of me, of my relationship with Derek, of my happiness. This whole thing is a setup. Remove her, Judge Reynolds ordered. 2 bailiffs moved to either side of Melissa, taking her arms. Mom. Melissa turned to look at me, and her face was twisted with hate. Mom, please, tell them the truth. Tell them you made this all up because you can't stand to see me happy. Tell them— I looked at my daughter, this stranger who had tried to kill me, and I typed slowly into my synthesizer. I hope you get the help you need, and I hope you spend a very long time in prison thinking about what you did." "I hate you," Melissa screamed as they dragged her toward the door. "I've always hated you. You smothered me my whole life. You never let me be my own person. Everything was always about what you wanted, what you needed, what you expected. I'm glad I poisoned you. I'm glad I hurt you. You deserved it. You deserve worse." The doors closed behind her, cutting off her screams. The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of my crying, the synthesizer in my lap, useless to express the depth of my grief. Judge Reynolds looked at me with sympathy. "Mrs. Henderson, I am so sorry for what you've endured. The court will reconvene in 6 weeks for the formal trial. Ms. Martinez, please ensure Mrs. Henderson has all the support she needs." "Yes, Your Honor," Linda said. Patricia helped me out of the courtroom, past reporters shouting questions, past curious onlookers into Linda's car. We drove in silence back to Patricia's house. What was there to say my daughter had confessed to trying to murder me? She'd screamed her hatred at me in open court. She'd shown everyone exactly who she really was. That night, I lay in Patricia's guest room and stared at the ceiling. The synthesizer sat on the nightstand silent. I didn't need it to talk to myself to replay Melissa's words in my mind. "I've always hated you." Had she? Had there ever been love between us? Or had I imagined it all? Had every hug, every "I love you," every moment I'd treasured been a lie? My phone buzzed. A text from Linda Martinez. "Derek Thornton arrested tonight. Emails show he knew about the poisoning, encouraged it, helped plan how to spend the money. He'll be charged as an accomplice." So it was both of them. Melissa and Derek planning my death together, spending my money in their minds before I was even cold. Had they laughed about it? Had they celebrated each time I got weaker, each time I coughed up blood? Another text. "Trial date set for 8 weeks from now. Prosecutor confident. Between her confession today and all the evidence she's looking at life, plus 30 years minimum. Derek probably 20 to life." Life plus 30 years. My daughter would die in prison. She would never be free, never buy that boat, never live the life she'd been so desperate for that she'd poisoned her own mother to get it. Part of me felt satisfaction at that. Justice. But another part, the part that had rocked her to sleep as a baby and kissed her scraped knees and celebrated her college graduation, that part just felt empty. Patricia knocked softly and came in without waiting for an answer. She sat on the edge of the bed and took my hand. "You don't have to be strong right now," she said. "You don't have to make sense of this or find meaning in it or any of that. What happened is senseless, evil, and you're allowed to just feel whatever you feel." I reached for the synthesizer. I still love her. After everything, I still love her. What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. She's your daughter. You can love her and hate what she did. You can grieve for the daughter you thought you had while being glad the daughter she actually is will face justice. It's complicated. It's allowed to be complicated. Over the next 8 weeks, I slowly healed. Physical therapy helped strengthen my body. Speech therapy helped reduce the scarring in my throat, though the doctors said I might never speak normally again. The synthesizer became less of a tool and more of an extension of myself. I learned to type faster to add emphasis through punctuation since I couldn't add it through tone. The media coverage was intense. Daughter poisons mother for inheritance was the kind of story that captured national attention. I gave one interview through the synthesizer explaining what had happened. I wanted people to know that elder abuse was real, that it could happen to anyone, that you couldn't always trust the people closest to you. The response was overwhelming. Letters from other victims of family violence, donations to cover my medical bills, offers of support from strangers who'd been moved by my story. It helped knowing I wasn't alone, that my pain had meaning beyond just my own tragedy. Derek Thornton's trial happened first. He took a plea deal agreeing to testify against Melissa in exchange for a reduced sentence, 20 years instead of life. He confirmed everything that he'd known Melissa was poisoning me, that he'd encouraged it, that they'd planned their future together down to the last detail. He showed no remorse during his testimony, only annoyance that they'd gotten caught. If she'd just been smarter about it, he said at one point, if she'd used smaller doses over a longer time, no one would have known. It would have looked like natural causes. His lawyer tried to argue that Derek hadn't actually administered any poison himself, that he was guilty only of failing to report a crime. But the judge wasn't sympathetic. You didn't just fail to report a crime, Mr. Thornton. You actively participated in planning a murder. You encouraged it. You benefited from it. 20 years is a gift. I suggest you take it. He did. Finally, Melissa's trial arrived. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and representatives from elder abuse prevention organizations. Melissa sat at the defense table looking small and defeated. She'd fired Robert Chen after his failure at the preliminary hearing and hired a new lawyer, a woman named Diana Frost, who had a reputation for getting impossible acquittals. But even Diana Frost couldn't work miracles with the evidence against Melissa. The prosecution's case was methodical and damning. They showed the videos of Melissa poisoning me. They entered the journal into evidence and read passages aloud. They brought in Dr. Chen to testify about my injuries. They played Derek's testimony about the planning and the money. They showed the bank records, the internet searches, the emails, the receipts for the boat and the cruise, and they called me to testify again. This time felt different. The preliminary hearing had been about establishing probable cause, but this was the real thing. This was where Melissa would be convicted or walk free. The weight of that responsibility pressed down on me as I took the witness stand. Patricia sat in the front row, her face encouraging. Linda Martinez stood near her table, ready to guide me through my testimony again. Mrs. Henderson, Linda began, can you tell the jury what it felt like when you realized your daughter was poisoning you? I typed carefully, wanting to get this right. Like my world ended. She was the only family I had left, the only person I trusted completely. Finding out she wanted me dead was worse than the physical pain. It was like being murdered twice, once in body and once in heart. Several jurors looked visibly moved. One woman dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Walk us through the night you set up the camera, Linda prompted. I was terrified. If she found out, I knew she might kill me faster, but I couldn't let her get away with it. I needed proof. So my neighbor Patricia helped me install a hidden camera, and I waited. 3 nights, I watched her poison me through my phone, recording everything while she sat beside my bed shopping for boats. Shopping for boats while you were dying. While she thought I was dying. She'd already spent my money in her mind. The boat, the house in the Bahamas, the new life with Derek. I was just an obstacle to her, something to remove so she could have what she wanted. Did she ever show any concern for your pain during those 6 weeks? I thought about that. Really thought about it. She showed concern the way an actor shows emotion. She said the right words, made the right faces, but her eyes were always calculating, watching to see if I was dying fast enough. I mistook her impatience for worry. I thought she was worried about me getting better. She was worried about me surviving. Diana Frost stood for cross-examination. She was in her 50s, elegant in a charcoal suit, her expression professionally sympathetic. Mrs. Henderson, I'm sorry for everything you've been through, but I need to ask you some difficult questions about your relationship with Melissa before the accident. I waited. Melissa testified during the preliminary hearing that you were controlling, that you smothered her. Is there any truth to that? I typed, I was a single mother who worked 3 jobs to give her a good life. If wanting her to succeed and supporting her dreams is controlling, then yes, I was controlling. Did you approve of Derek? I never met Derek. She kept that relationship secret from me. Why do you think she did that? You'd have to ask her. I'm asking you, is it possible she kept Derek secret because she knew you'd disapprove, that you'd try to control that aspect of her life too? Linda stood. Objection, speculation. Sustained, the judge said. Diana tried again. Did you ever tell Melissa she couldn't date certain people? When she was a teenager? Yes. One boyfriend was arrested for drug dealing. I forbade her from seeing him. That's called parenting. And as an adult, she made her own choices. I didn't interfere. Even when those choices led to divorce. Especially then, she needed support, not judgment. So you gave her money during the divorce? I helped with her legal fees, about $15,000. And you expected to be repaid? No, it was a gift. Did you often give her money when she needed it? So she came to rely on your financial support. Sometimes. What's your point? Diana smiled slightly. My point, Mrs. Henderson, is that Melissa was financially dependent on you. You held the purse strings which gave you power over her. Isn't it possible that she felt trapped, that the only way she could ever be truly independent was to wait for your death? I felt anger surge through me. So because I helped my daughter when she was struggling, I deserve to be poisoned. No one deserves to be poisoned. But people in desperate situations sometimes make desperate choices. She wasn't desperate. She had a job, an apartment, a boyfriend. She chose to move in with me. She chose to take over my care. She chose to poison me and steal my money. Those were choices, not desperation. But you admit you had financial control over her life. I had financial control over my own money. Money I earned. Money she had no right to until I died naturally. She didn't want to wait. That's not my fault. Diana switched tactics. Let's talk about your pain medication. You were on morphine and oxycodone, correct? Yes. High doses. Therapeutic doses. Did these medications ever cause confusion, memory problems, hallucinations? No. Never. Not even once. The only confusion I experienced was wondering why my daughter wanted me dead. Mrs. Henderson, is it possible that in your medicated state you misinterpreted innocent actions, that Melissa was actually adding supplements to help you heal, and you convinced yourself it was poison because you were paranoid from the drugs? Is it possible the video evidence is fake? Is it possible the medical evidence showing chemical burns is fake? Is it possible her journal documenting every dose is fake? Is it possible her confession in open court was fake? I was typing fast now, my anger making me careless with punctuation. She poisoned me. The evidence proves it. Your job is to defend her, so you're trying to make me seem crazy. But I'm not crazy. I'm a survivor. Diana looked at the jury, then back at me. Nothing further. The prosecution rested after my testimony. Diana Frost called several character witnesses for Melissa people who testified that she'd been a loving daughter, a good friend, a responsible employee. But none of them had seen her during those 6 weeks. None of them had watched her measure out poison and mix it into my food. Their testimony felt hollow, irrelevant. Then Diana made a surprising move. She called Melissa to the stand again. Melissa had clearly learned from her previous outburst. She was calm, composed, tearful at appropriate moments. Diana walked her through a narrative of financial stress, caretaker burnout, and deteriorating mental health. I was overwhelmed, Melissa said, her voice breaking. Mom was so sick, and I was trying to work and care for her and manage all her medical needs. I wasn't sleeping. I was barely eating. I started having intrusive thoughts, dark thoughts about what it would be like if she just died, and I didn't have to do this anymore. That's what the journal was. It was me processing those dark thoughts, not planning to act on them. And the search is about poisoning, Diana asked. I was scared of my own thoughts. I wanted to understand them to see if other people had similar ideation when they were under extreme stress. The searches were about understanding myself, not planning a crime. What about the substance you were adding to your mother's feeding tube? I thought it was a vitamin supplement. I ordered it from a website that looked legitimate. They sent me a brown bottle with no label. I should have questioned that, but I was so desperate for anything that might help Mom heal faster. I didn't know it was drain cleaner. I never would have used it if I'd known. Can you show the court the website where you ordered it? It's gone now. I think it was a scam site. When I tried to find it again after the arrest, the whole website had disappeared. How convenient, Linda muttered beside me. And the money you transferred from your mother's accounts, Diana continued. Medical expenses, like I said before. I kept some receipts, but not all of them. I didn't think I needed to document every purchase because I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was using Mom's money for Mom's care. What about the deposit on the boat? That was Derek's idea. He said I needed something to look forward to, something to keep me going through the stress of caretaking. It was aspirational, not a real plan. We were going to cancel it once Mom recovered. Once she recovered, or once she died? Recovered? I wanted her to recover. She's my mother. I love her. It was a compelling performance, I had to admit. If I hadn't lived through it, if I hadn't seen her cold smile as she poured poison into my food, I might have almost believed her. But I had lived through it, and I knew the truth. Linda Martinez stood for cross-examination, and her first question cut right through Melissa's narrative. Ms. Henderson, if you loved your mother so much, why did you say, "I hate you"? I've always hated you in open court during the preliminary hearing. Melissa's composure flickered. I was upset, angry. I said things I didn't mean. You also said, "I'm glad I poisoned you. I'm glad I hurt you. You deserved it." Did you mean that I was having a breakdown? Nothing I said that day reflected my true feelings. Really, because to me it sounded like the first honest thing you'd said in weeks. No more pretending to be the devoted daughter, just raw truth about how you really felt. That's not fair. I was being attacked, accused of horrible things. Anyone would lash out. Most people who are falsely accused say, "I'm innocent," not "I'm glad I hurt you." Those are very different responses, Ms. Henderson. Melissa didn't have an answer for that. Let's talk about this vitamin supplement you claim to have ordered. You said the website disappeared, so you can't show us where you bought it. But surely you have a credit card statement showing the purchase. I paid with a prepaid debit card. Why would you do that for a legitimate purchase? The website only accepted certain payment methods. So you bought an unlabeled supplement from a website that only accepted untraceable payment methods, and now both the website and the payment record have conveniently disappeared, and you want this jury to believe that's all just coincidence. It's the truth. Here's what I think is the truth. You bought drain cleaner from a hardware store. Patricia Brennan saw you. The receipt we found in your apartment confirms it. You removed the label so it couldn't be traced. You methodically poisoned your mother for 6 weeks while documenting her decline in your journal. You stole $200,000 from her accounts. You planned a future with Derek using her life insurance money. And when you got caught, you made up this absurd story about supplements and websites and caretaker stress. No, that's not what happened. Then why did Derek testify that you told him explicitly that you were poisoning your mother, that you laughed about how easy it was, that you said, and I quote, "She trusts me completely. She has no idea what's happening"? Derek is lying to save himself. He took a plea deal. He'd say anything the prosecution wanted. So Derek's lying. The video evidence is somehow misleading. The medical evidence is a misinterpretation. Your journal is fiction. Your internet searches are research. Your confession was a breakdown, and your mother is paranoid from medication. Everyone and everything is wrong except you. Is that your position? I'm innocent. You're a liar and a would-be murderer, and this jury is going to see through you just like your mother finally did. Objection. Diana Frost was on her feet, argumentative and inflammatory. Sustained, the judge said. Ms. Martinez, rephrase. No further questions, Linda said. I think the jury has heard enough. The closing arguments happened the next day. Diana Frost made an emotional appeal about reasonable doubt, about the possibility of innocent explanations about the tragedy of a daughter's life being destroyed by circumstantial evidence. She painted Melissa as a victim of overzealous prosecution and a mother's medically induced paranoia. Linda Martinez's closing was simpler and more devastating. She played excerpts from the videos. She read passages from the journal. She displayed photos of my scarred throat. She showed the bank statements, the emails about the boat, Derek's testimony about their plans. Members of the jury, Linda said, this is not a complicated case. Melissa Henderson poisoned her mother. We have video of her doing it. We have medical evidence of the damage she caused. We have her journal documenting every dose. We have her boyfriend's testimony about their plans. We have her own confession in open court. The defense wants you to believe that all of this evidence is somehow wrong or misleading. But the simplest explanation is usually the truth. And the truth is that Melissa Henderson tried to murder her mother for money. She failed only because her mother was smart enough and brave enough to catch her. Don't let Melissa Henderson escape justice by hiding behind ridiculous stories about disappeared websites and fictional journals. Look at the evidence. Listen to Margaret Henderson's testimony and find this defendant guilty. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. I spent those 3 hours in a witness room with Patricia and Linda, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except what would happen if Melissa was acquitted. Would she come after me again? Would she finish what she started? Or would she just walk away free to poison someone else's mother? "Stop," Patricia said, reading my mind. "She's not getting acquitted. The evidence is overwhelming." "Juries are unpredictable," Linda warned. "But Patricia's right. I've never had a stronger case. If they acquit after what they saw and heard, then the system is completely broken." A bailiff knocked on the door. "They're back." My hands shook as Patricia helped me into the courtroom. Melissa was already at the defense table, her face pale, her hands gripping the edge like she might fall otherwise. The jury filed in their expressions, serious, unreadable. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor," the foreperson said, standing. She was a middle-aged woman, a teacher based on the voir dire. She looked at Melissa with something like pity mixed with disgust. "On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find guilty?" Melissa made a small sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Diana Frost put a hand on her shoulder. "On the charge of assault with a deadly weapon, guilty. On the charge of elder abuse, guilty. On the charge of financial exploitation of an elderly person, guilty. On the charge of theft by deception, guilty." 5 guilty verdicts. On every single charge. I felt Patricia's arms around me, felt tears on my face, but I couldn't look away from Melissa. She was crying silently, her whole body shaking. Diana Frost was whispering something to her, probably about appeals, but Melissa wasn't listening. She was staring at me. "Mom," she mouthed, not shouting, not screaming like at the preliminary hearing, just that one word, silent, desperate. I turned away. Sentencing was scheduled for 3 weeks later, which gave Linda time to prepare a victim impact statement and for Melissa to contemplate what she'd done. I spent those 3 weeks trying to rebuild some semblance of a normal life. Physical therapy continued. My speech improved slightly enough that I could make some sounds, though they were harsh and painful. The synthesizer was still necessary for real communication. I also met with a lawyer to revise my will. I removed Melissa entirely. Every penny would go to charities supporting elder abuse prevention and survivors of family violence. If Melissa thought she'd eventually inherit after serving her time, she was wrong. She'd get nothing from me. Not now, not ever. The sentencing hearing was packed again. Victim advocates, reporters, members of various elder protection organizations, all wanting to see justice served. Melissa sat at the defense table looking thin and exhausted. Prison had not been kind to her during the 3 weeks since conviction. The judge asked if I wanted to make a statement before sentencing. I did. I'd been preparing it for weeks, typing and retyping until every word was exactly right. Patricia helped me to the front of the courtroom. I stood there with my synthesizer facing the judge, but aware of Melissa watching me from the side. "Your Honor," the electronic voice said, speaking my carefully chosen words. "My daughter tried to kill me. She poisoned me for 6 weeks, watching me suffer, stealing my money, planning her future, while I slowly died. She didn't do this in a moment of passion or rage. She didn't do it because I abused her or mistreated her. She did it because she was impatient and greedy and because she valued money more than my life." I paused, making sure everyone was listening. "The physical damage she caused will never fully heal. I will never speak normally again. I will always have scarring in my throat. I will always carry the pain of knowing my own child wanted me dead. But I survived. I caught her. I testified against her. And now I'm asking this court to send a message that elder abuse will not be tolerated, that poisoning your own parent is not something you can talk your way out of, that actions have consequences." Another pause. "Melissa took 6 weeks of my life, weeks spent in agony and fear. She stole my money, my trust, my voice. She tried to steal my future. I want her to spend the rest of her life in prison thinking about what she did. I want her to understand that the inheritance she killed for is going to people she hurt, not to her. I want her to know that she destroyed her own life for nothing." I looked directly at Melissa for the first time. Her face was streaked with tears, her eyes begging me for something, mercy maybe, or forgiveness. "You told me you hated me. You told me you were glad you hurt me. You told me I deserved it. I want you to know that I don't hate you. I pity you. You could have had a real life with real connections and real love. But you chose money and boats and fantasies. You chose to poison the one person who would have given you anything if you'd just asked. And now you have nothing. No inheritance, no Derek, no freedom, no future. Just years and years to think about what you threw away. I turned back to the judge. Give her the maximum sentence, Your Honor, not for revenge but for justice, and for every other elderly person who trusts their children to care for them. Show them that the system protects the vulnerable even when family doesn't. I sat down. Patricia was crying. Several jurors who'd returned for sentencing were crying. Even Linda looked moved, and she'd heard the statement when I practiced it. The judge looked at Melissa. Does the defendant wish to make a statement? Melissa stood slowly. She looked at me, then at the judge, then at the floor. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. It's like I became someone else, someone I don't recognize. I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted money. I wanted freedom. But I never really wanted to kill you, Mom. I just wanted you to go away for a while so I could breathe. It was weak, half-hearted, still making excuses, still not taking full responsibility. The judge didn't look impressed. Ms. Henderson, I've been on the bench for 30 years. I've seen many terrible things. But what you did to your mother ranks among the most cold-blooded, calculated acts I've encountered. You didn't act in passion. You didn't act in fear. You acted in pure, selfish greed. Over 42 days, you had countless opportunities to stop, to recognize what you were doing was evil. But you didn't stop. You kept poisoning. You kept stealing. You kept planning your future built on your mother's grave. Melissa was sobbing now, but the judge continued relentlessly. The law allows me to sentence you to up to 50 years for attempted murder, 10 years for assault, 15 years for elder abuse, and 10 years for financial crimes. These can be served consecutively. Given the severity of your actions, the premeditation involved the vulnerability of your victim and your complete lack of genuine remorse, I am sentencing you to the maximum on all counts. Melissa's knees buckled. Diana Frost caught her. 50 years for attempted murder, 10 years for assault, 15 years for elder abuse, 10 years for financial exploitation, 5 years for theft, all sentences to run consecutively. That's 90 years total. With your age and the nature of these crimes, Ms. Henderson, you will never leave prison. You will die there. No, Melissa moaned. Please, I'm only 34. I'll be an old woman. I'll die in there. You tried to kill your mother when she was 62. You showed her no mercy. You get none from this court. The judge banged her gavel. 90 years. No possibility of parole for 30 years. Restitution of all stolen funds plus medical expenses. Court is adjourned. The bailiffs moved toward Melissa as she collapsed, completely screaming and crying. Diana Frost was trying to talk about appeals about sentence reduction, but her words were lost in Melissa's hysterics. They dragged her from the courtroom, still screaming, still begging for mercy she hadn't given me. I sat there feeling hollow. Justice had been served. Melissa would spend the rest of her life in prison. She'd never hurt me or anyone else again. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of something that should never have ended this way. It's over, Patricia said beside me. It's really over. Is it? The synthesizer asked. Or is this just a different kind of ending? Linda Martinez came over and squeezed my shoulder. You were incredibly brave. Your testimony, your victim impact statement, your strength throughout this whole ordeal. You saved your own life, and you probably saved others too. Who knows what Melissa would have done if she'd gotten away with this? She didn't get away with it, Patricia added. She got exactly what she deserved. But deserved or not, 90 years was a lifetime. My daughter would die in prison. The little girl I'd raised, the teenager I'd supported through heartbreak, the woman I'd helped through her divorce, she was gone, replaced by a convict, a prisoner, a number in the system. We left the courthouse through a back entrance to avoid reporters. I was done telling my story, done reliving my trauma for public consumption. I just wanted to go home, except I didn't have a home anymore. The house where Melissa had poisoned me was contaminated with memories I couldn't scrub away. I'd already put it on the market. "Come stay with me as long as you need," Patricia said as we drove. "Forever if you want. Your family, Margaret. More family than Melissa ever was." That made me cry, the synthetic voice of the device, unable to convey the depth of my emotion. Patricia pulled over and just held me while I sobbed great heaving sobs that hurt my damaged throat, but needed to come out anyway. The next few months were about healing, both physical and emotional. My speech improved enough that I could make myself understood without the synthesizer, though my voice was permanently damaged, raspy, and weak. I'd never sing again, never speak clearly enough for most people to understand on the first try. But I could communicate, and that was something. The house sold quickly. I used some of the money to pay Patricia back for everything she'd done, though she refused at first. "Take it," I insisted, my raspy voice barely audible. "You saved my life. You were there every day. You believed me when I could have been wrong. Take the money." Patricia finally accepted $50,000, though she cried while doing it. "I didn't do it for money," she kept saying. "I know. That's why you deserve it." The rest of the house sale money, combined with what I'd recovered from Melissa's theft, went into a trust. I set up the Margaret Henderson Foundation for Elder Abuse Prevention. We funded hotlines, educational programs, home visits for isolated seniors, and legal support for victims. If my suffering could prevent even one other person from going through what I'd endured, it would mean something. 6 months after sentencing, I received a letter from the prison. Melissa wanted to see me. She'd written a 3-page letter explaining how sorry she was, how prison had given her time to reflect, how she understood now what she'd done was unforgivable, but hoped I might someday forgive her anyway. I read it once, then put it in a drawer. I wasn't ready. Maybe I never would be. 3 months later, another letter arrived. This one was shorter, more desperate. Melissa was struggling in prison. The other inmates had found out what she'd done. "Nobody likes a parent killer," she wrote. "They spit on me, steal my food, threaten me constantly. I'm terrified all the time. Please, Mom, please come visit. I need to see a friendly face. I need to know someone still cares if I live or die." I showed the letter to my therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Rachel Santos, who specialized in family trauma. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "I don't know," I rasped. "Part of me wants to let her suffer. She made me suffer for 6 weeks. Why shouldn't she suffer for 90 years? And the other part remembers pushing her on swings, reading her bedtime stories, teaching her to ride a bike. That part wants to visit to see if there's anything left of the daughter I loved." "Both feelings are valid," Dr. Santos said. "You don't have to choose right now. And you don't have to choose at all if you don't want to. Your only obligation is to yourself, to your healing." But the letters kept coming. Once a week, then twice a week, then almost daily. Melissa's desperation bled through every word. She talked about the violence, the isolation, the constant fear. She talked about how she'd made a terrible mistake and would spend the rest of her life paying for it. She talked about how much she missed me, how sorry she was, how she'd give anything to take it back. The letters piled up in the drawer unread after the first few. I couldn't keep absorbing her pain when I was still processing my own. But one letter arriving almost a year after sentencing was different. The envelope was thicker, and when I opened it, I found not just a letter, but also pages torn from what looked like a journal. "Mom," the letter began, "I know you probably don't read these anymore. I wouldn't if I were you. But I'm sending this because my therapist here says I need to be completely honest with you, even if you never respond. So here's my therapy journal. Everything I've written about you, about what I did, about why I did it. No more excuses, no more lies. Just the truth. You deserve at least that much." I almost threw it away. I didn't want to read Melissa's therapeutic revelations. But something made me hesitate, and late that night, unable to sleep, I pulled out the journal pages and started reading. Session 1. Dr. Morrison asked me to write about my relationship with my mother. I don't know where to start. I love her, and I hate her, and I tried to kill her, and I don't understand how all of those things can be true at once. Session 3. I told Dr. Morrison today that I've resented my mother since I was a teenager. She sacrificed everything for me, and I hated her for it. Every time she worked a double shift, every time she wore old clothes so I could have new ones, every time she gave up something she wanted so I could have what I needed, it felt like a weight around my neck, like she was keeping a ledger of everything I owed her. Session 5. But she never actually asked for anything back. That's what I can't reconcile. She never threw her sacrifices in my face. She never demanded gratitude or obedience or anything. She just loved me. And somehow, that made it worse, because I couldn't even blame her for my resentment. It was all me, all my own selfishness and ingratitude. Session 8. Dr. Morrison asked me when I first thought about killing her. I lied and said it was after the accident. But the truth is, I've been having those thoughts since my divorce. When I had to ask her for money again, when I had to admit my marriage had failed, when I had to move back into her house like a child. I felt pathetic, and I blamed her for that feeling even though she never made me feel pathetic. She only ever tried to help. Session 12. I met Derek during my marriage. I was cheating on Tom for a year before Tom found out and left me. I've never told anyone that. Everyone thinks Tom cheated first. But it was me. I destroyed my marriage, then played the victim so Mom would support me financially. I lied to her about everything. Session 15. When Mom had the accident, my first thought was relief. Not concern, not fear. Relief. Because now I wouldn't have to wait for her to die naturally. The universe had handed me an opportunity and I took it. I researched for 2 days before I decided on drain cleaner. Small doses, gradual poisoning would look like complications from her injuries. It was perfect. I had to stop reading. My hands were shaking, my damaged throat tight with suppressed sobs. This was worse than the trial, worse than the journal they'd found. This was Melissa, stripped completely bare, admitting things even her lawyer hadn't known. The depth of her deception, her calculation, her fundamental brokenness as a human being. But I kept reading. Session 18, Dr. Morrison asked me to write about the actual poisoning, what it felt like to do it. I've been avoiding this entry for a week. The truth is, the first time was terrifying. I stood over her bed with the drain cleaner in my pocket, and my hands were shaking so badly I almost spilled it. But then I looked at her unconscious and helpless, and I thought about the life insurance money. $800,000. Freedom. And I poured it in. Session 19. The second time was easier. The third time I barely hesitated. By the end, it was routine. Mix the formula, add the poison, connect the tube, watch her suffer. I told myself I was putting her out of her misery, that she was better off dead than living with those injuries. But that was a lie. I just wanted the money. Session 22, I need to write about the worst part, the part I can barely admit to myself. I enjoyed watching her decline. Every time she coughed up blood, every time she couldn't eat, every time she looked at me with those trusting eyes while I was slowly killing her, I felt powerful, in control. My whole life she'd been the strong one, the capable one, the one who fixed everything. And finally, I had power over her. It was sick. I was sick. I am sick. Session 25. Mom caught me because I got sloppy. I got confident. I thought she was too weak, too medicated, too trusting to ever suspect me. That's what Dr. Morrison calls narcissistic blindness. I was so sure of my own cleverness that I couldn't see I was making mistakes. The hardware store where Patricia saw me, the journal I kept instead of destroying, the emails with Derek where we discussed details. I thought I was smarter than everyone. I was just arrogant. Session 30. I had a breakdown in group therapy today. Another inmate asked what I was in for and I told her the truth. She called me a monster and refused to speak to me again. She's right. I am a monster. I tried to kill the one person who loved me unconditionally. And for what? A boat. A house money. Things that don't matter, that never mattered. I destroyed my life and my mother's life for things. Session 35. I dream about her every night. Sometimes she's healthy, and we're doing things we used to do together, shopping or watching movies or just talking. Sometimes she's in that hospital bed, and I'm pouring poison into her food while she begs me to stop. I always wake up crying. The guards think I'm weak. The other inmates think I'm pathetic. They're both right. Session 40, Dr. Morrison asked me what I would say to Mom if she was here. I said I'd tell her I'm sorry, but she said that's not enough, that sorry is a word people use to avoid real accountability. She asked me what I'd actually say if I had to be completely honest. So here it is. The thing I'd say, if Mom was sitting across from me right now, I tried to murder you because I'm broken inside. Because I've always been broken, and instead of getting help, I blamed you for my brokenness. I made you the villain in my story, so I could justify being the villain in yours. And I'm sorry isn't enough, will never be enough, because sorry doesn't unburn your throat, or give you back your voice, or erase the trauma. Sorry doesn't bring back the mother-daughter relationship I destroyed. Sorry is just a word, and words are all I have left because actions don't matter anymore. I already took all the actions that mattered, and they were all evil. The journal pages ended there. I sat in Patricia's guest room at 2 a.m, tears streaming down my face, reading my daughter's confession of complete moral bankruptcy. This wasn't the therapy of someone seeking redemption. This was the therapy of someone who'd finally looked in the mirror and seen a monster staring back. "What do I do with this?" I asked Dr. Santos at our next session, showing her the pages. She read them carefully, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she looked at me with something like sadness. "Melissa is doing real work in therapy. This is genuine introspection, painful and unflinching. But Margaret, her healing journey is separate from yours. You don't owe her forgiveness just because she's finally being honest about what she did." "But she's suffering. She should be suffering. She committed a terrible crime. Prison is her consequence. Her suffering doesn't obligate you to alleviate it." "Then why did she send this to me?" "Maybe because she needs you to know she understands now. Maybe because her therapist encouraged transparency. Maybe because she's still manipulating you consciously or unconsciously by sharing her pain so you'll feel sorry for her. I don't know her motivations, neither do you. The only thing you can control is your response." I thought about that for days. Melissa was in prison facing 90 years, surrounded by people who hated her for what she'd done. She was being honest in therapy, confronting her actions, experiencing genuine remorse. Wasn't that what rehabilitation was supposed to look like? Wasn't that what the justice system claimed to want? But she'd tried to kill me. She'd poisoned me for 6 weeks. She'd stolen my money and planned her future on my grave. She'd looked at my suffering and felt powerful. How much remorse could possibly be enough to balance that? 2 months after receiving the journal pages, I made a decision. I called the prison and arranged a visit. Patricia tried to talk me out of it. "Margaret, you don't have to do this. You don't owe her anything." "I know, but I need to see her. I need to look at her face and hear her voice and decide for myself if any part of the daughter I loved still exists. And if she doesn't, then at least I'll know." The prison was exactly as grim as I'd imagined. Concrete walls, barbed wire guards with expressions that suggested they'd seen too much of humanity's worst. I went through security, surrendered my belongings, and was led to a visiting room divided by plexiglass barriers. Phones on either side for communication. No physical contact allowed for attempted murderers. I sat down and waited. When they brought Melissa in, I barely recognized her. She'd lost weight, her face gaunt and pale. Her hair, once carefully styled, hung limp and unwashed. She had a bruise on her cheek, yellowing but still visible. Prison tattoos were starting to form on her arms, crude markings that other inmates had probably forced on her. She sat down across from me, picked up the phone, and just stared. Her eyes filled with tears. "Mom," she said, her voice breaking. "You came." I picked up my phone. "I got your letters, your journal. I didn't think you'd read them." I almost didn't. My raspy voice sounded harsh through the phone, a constant reminder of what she'd done. But I needed to understand. I needed to know if you actually got it, or if this was just another manipulation. "It's not manipulation. I swear it's not. I've had a lot of time to think, Mom. Too much time. All I do is think about what I did to you, what I became, how I threw everything away." She wiped at her tears with her free hand. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just needed you to know that I understand now. I understand what I took from you. Do you really understand what it felt like to realize my own daughter was killing me? I'm trying to understand. Dr. Morrison makes me write from your perspective to imagine what you felt. I can't ever really know, but I'm trying. Why did you do it, Melissa? And don't tell me about financial stress or caretaker burnout. I read your real journal. You'd been thinking about it for years. Why? Melissa was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was small. Because I'm selfish. Because I wanted things I couldn't afford. Because waiting for you to die naturally felt like forever, and I'm impatient. Because I'm broken inside, and instead of fixing myself, I decided to break you. That's what your therapist taught you to say. Tell me the real reason. The one you haven't admitted to anyone. She looked at me, and for the first time since she'd sat down, I saw something genuine in her eyes. Because I was jealous. Of your strength, your resilience, your ability to be happy even after Dad left and even after you lost Richard. You kept going, kept smiling, kept loving. And I couldn't do that. I fell apart over a divorce. I needed your money and your support and your constant reassurance. And I hated you for being stronger than me. I hated that I needed you. So I decided to eliminate the need by eliminating you. There it was. The truth, underneath all the therapy speak and practiced remorse. She'd tried to kill me because my existence reminded her of her own weakness. Thank you, I said, for finally being honest. Does it help? Knowing the truth. It helps me let go. I've spent over a year wondering what I did wrong, how I failed you as a mother, but I didn't fail you. You failed yourself. And that's not my burden to carry anymore. Mom, I know I don't have the right to ask, but is there any chance, any possibility that someday you might forgive me? I looked at my daughter through the plexiglass, this stranger who'd once been my whole world. I don't know. Maybe someday. But not today. Not this year. Maybe not ever. What you did broke something in me that can't be fixed with apologies or therapy revelations. I understand. Do you want to know what the worst part is? It's not the physical damage. It's not my voice or my throat or the pain I still feel every day. It's that you killed my ability to trust. I can't have relationships anymore because I'm always waiting for betrayal. I can't be vulnerable because being vulnerable almost got me killed. You didn't just try to take my life. You took my ability to live it fully. Melissa was sobbing now, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't fix what's broken. Sorry doesn't give me back what you took. Sorry is just a word, and words don't mean much coming from someone who lied to me for 6 weeks while poisoning me. Then why did you come? If you can't forgive me, if sorry doesn't matter, why are you here? Because I needed to see if anything of my daughter remained, if there was any part of you worth salvaging. And is there? I studied her face, looking for traces of the little girl who'd climbed into my lap when she had nightmares, the teenager who'd cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak, the young woman who'd called me her best friend. But all I saw was a broken criminal who'd made terrible choices and was now facing the consequences. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe. But even if there is, she's not my daughter anymore. That relationship died the night you first poured drain cleaner into my feeding tube. You killed her, along with almost killing me. So this is goodbye. This is me releasing you, releasing the hope that we'll ever have a normal mother-daughter relationship, releasing the fantasy that prison will somehow transform you back into the person I thought you were, releasing my obligation to love you just because we share DNA. You're a stranger to me now, Melissa, a stranger who happens to have my eyes. I deserve that, she whispered. Yes, you do. I stood up ready to leave. Your therapist is right. You need to keep doing the work. Not for me, not for some imagined future reconciliation, but for yourself. Because if you don't fundamentally change who you are, you'll just be a monster in a cage for 90 years. At least if you change, you'll be a human being who made a terrible mistake. Will you visit again? I don't think so. This needed to happen once, for closure. But I don't think I can keep doing this. It hurts too much. I understand. She pressed her hand against the plexiglass. Thank you for coming. Thank you for reading my letters. Thank you for not completely giving up on the idea that I might still be human. I didn't press my hand to the glass opposite hers. I didn't return the gesture. I just nodded and hung up the phone. As I walked away, I heard her crying, but I didn't turn around. That part of my life was over. Patricia was waiting in the parking lot. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug. How was it? Necessary, painful, final. Final is good. Final means you can move forward. And I did move forward slowly, but steadily. The foundation grew, helping more victims every month. I spoke at conferences about elder abuse using my synthesizer to tell my story to audiences who needed to hear it. I testified before Congress about the need for stronger protections for vulnerable adults. My voice might have been damaged, but my message was clear. 18 months after my visit to the prison, I got a call from Linda Martinez. Margaret, I wanted you to hear this from me first. Derek Thornton died in prison yesterday. Another inmate stabbed him during a fight in the yard. Apparently, word got around about what he'd done, and someone decided to administer their own justice. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sorrow, just emptiness. How's Melissa taking it? I don't know. I haven't spoken to her. But I imagine she's devastated. He was her only connection to her life before prison. She'll survive. She's stronger than she thinks she is. Are you okay? Yes. Surprisingly, yes. A year ago, news like this would have destroyed me. Now it's just information. I finally separated myself from her chaos. 6 months after that, I met someone. His name was Robert, a widower whose wife had died of cancer 3 years earlier. We met at a grief support group, of all places, both of us there for different reasons, but similar pain. He knew my story. Everyone knew my story after all the media coverage. But he didn't treat me like a victim or a curiosity. He treated me like a person. Your voice doesn't bother me, he said on our third date when I apologized for having to repeat myself. It's unique. It's yours. And it represents survival, which is beautiful. We took things slowly. I was still afraid of vulnerability, still waiting for betrayal. But Robert was patient. He let me set the pace, never pushed, never demanded more than I could give. Gradually, carefully, I learned to trust again. Patricia cried when I told her I was dating someone. I'm so happy for you, Margaret. You deserve this. You deserve happiness. I'm not sure about deserve, but I'm willing to try for it. 2 years after Melissa's sentencing, I got a letter from her therapist at the prison, Dr. Morrison. Mrs. Henderson, I'm writing to update you on Melissa's progress. I know you've chosen not to visit or correspond with her, and I respect that decision. However, I thought you might want to know that Melissa has made significant strides in therapy. She's participating in victim impact classes, working in the prison library, and helping other inmates with education programs. She's not asking for anything from you. She's simply trying to become a better person in the time she has left. I thought you'd want to know that your testimony and your strength inspired real change, even if that change can't undo the harm that was done. I showed the letter to Robert. What do you think? I think it's good that she's improving, but it doesn't change what she did or what you lost. Her redemption arc is for her, not for you. Exactly what my therapist says. Smart woman. I never responded to Dr. Morrison's letter, but I kept it in a drawer along with Melissa's journal pages. Maybe someday I'd want to remember that she'd tried to become better. Maybe someday it would matter. 3 years after the poisoning, I stood in front of a crowd of 200 people at an elder abuse prevention conference. My foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined, with chapters in 15 states and a national hotline that received hundreds of calls every month. I'd helped change laws, influenced policy, and saved lives. The little girl whose mother had tried to kill her had become a nationally recognized advocate for vulnerable adults. My name is Margaret Henderson, I said through my damaged voice, which the microphone amplified so everyone could hear. 3 years ago, my daughter tried to murder me by poisoning my feeding tube with drain cleaner. She did this for 6 weeks while I trusted her completely. She did it for money, for a boat, for a fantasy life with her boyfriend. She almost succeeded. The crowd was silent, attentive. But I survived. I caught her. I testified against her, and she's now serving 90 years in prison. I share this story not for sympathy, but to illustrate a point. Elder abuse happens in families that look normal. It happens to people who think they're safe. It happens because abusers know their victims are vulnerable and trusting. My daughter counted on me, never suspecting her. She was almost right. I paused, gathering strength. If you're caring for an elderly parent or relative, look for warning signs: unexplained injuries, financial irregularities, isolation from friends and other family, changes in behavior or mood. And if you're an elderly person receiving care, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Document everything. Tell someone outside the family. Install cameras if necessary. Don't let trust blind you to danger. I told them about Patricia, about how a neighbor's concern had saved my life. I told them about Dr. Chen, about how medical professionals needed training to recognize abuse. I told them about Detective Walsh, about how law enforcement needed resources to investigate these cases properly. I told them about Judge Reynolds, about how the justice system needed to take elder abuse as seriously as any other violent crime. My daughter destroyed my voice, I concluded, but she gave me a platform. My suffering has meaning now because I can use it to help others. That doesn't make what happened okay. It doesn't erase my trauma or give me back what I lost, but it gives me purpose, and sometimes purpose is enough to keep going. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. People came up afterward to share their stories, to thank me, to tell me I'd inspired them. An elderly woman with tears in her eyes said, "My son has been taking my Social Security checks. I've been afraid to report him, but after hearing you, I'm going to call that hotline you mentioned. Thank you for being brave enough to speak out." That's what it was all about. Not revenge against Melissa, not even justice, really. It was about preventing others from experiencing what I'd experienced. It was about turning horror into hope. That night, Robert and I sat on Patricia's porch watching the sunset. I'd bought my own place, finally, a small condo across town, but I still visited Patricia regularly. She'd become more than a neighbor. She was family, the real kind, the chosen kind. "You were amazing today," Robert said, holding my hand. "I was terrified," I admitted. "Bravery isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite the fear." "Where'd you learn that, a fortune cookie?" He laughed. "Probably, but it's true. You've taken something terrible and made it matter. That's rare." "It still hurts, every day. My throat, my voice, my heart. Some damage is permanent." "I know, but you're building something beautiful on top of the ruins. That's all any of us can do." He was right. Melissa had tried to destroy me, but I'd refused to stay destroyed. I'd rebuilt myself different than before, but still standing, still fighting, still here. 4 years after the poisoning, I was contacted by a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell my story. I almost said no. I'd told it so many times already, but she explained that she wanted to focus not on the crime, but on the recovery, on how I'd transformed trauma into advocacy, on how survivors could reclaim their power. "I'll do it," I said, "but on one condition. The focus stays on prevention and healing. I don't want this to be true crime entertainment. I want it to help people." Agreed. The documentary took 6 months to film. They interviewed me, Patricia, Dr. Chen, Detective Walsh, Linda Martinez, even Judge Reynolds. They showed the Foundation's work, the lives we'd changed, the legislation we'd influenced. At the very end, they asked if I had any message for Melissa. I thought carefully before answering. I hope she's found peace with what she did. I hope she's become the person she should have been all along. And I hope she understands that while I've forgiven the universe for what happened, forgiveness for her is something I'm still working toward. Maybe someday. But I'm not there yet, and that's okay. The documentary premiered at film festivals and won several awards. It sparked conversations about elder abuse across the country. Hotline calls tripled. Donations to prevention organizations, including my foundation, surged. My pain had become a catalyst for change. 5 years after the poisoning, I received a final letter from Melissa. The envelope was different from the others, heavier, more formal. Inside was a single page with just a few lines written in her handwriting. "Mom, I'm not writing to ask for anything. I just want you to know that I'm using my time here to help other inmates get their GEDs to teach them skills they'll need if they ever get out. I'm not expecting redemption. I know what I did can't be redeemed, but I can at least stop being useless. Thank you for teaching me, even if I learned the lessons far too late. Your daughter, Melissa. I showed it to Dr. Santos at our session. She stopped asking for forgiveness. How does that make you feel? Relieved, like she's finally taking responsibility without expecting a reward for it. Are you going to respond? I thought about it for a long time. Eventually, I wrote back just one sentence. I'm glad you're finding purpose. Keep going. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. It was simply acknowledgement that she was trying and that trying mattered even when the outcome didn't change. 6 years after the poisoning, Patricia had a health scare. A heart attack, thankfully mild, but scary enough to remind us both how fragile life was. I spent every day at the hospital with her, and when she recovered, she moved in with Robert and me. We'd gotten married quietly the year before, just us and a few friends, and our house had plenty of room. I saved your life, and now you're returning the favor, Patricia joked as I helped her settle into the guest room. We save each other, I corrected. That's what real family does. 7 years after the poisoning, my foundation received a major grant that allowed us to expand nationwide. We opened offices in 30 states, trained thousands of healthcare workers and law enforcement officers, and helped prosecute hundreds of elder abuse cases. We'd become the leading voice in elder protection advocacy. During the press conference announcing the grant, a reporter asked if I'd ever reconciled with Melissa. No, I said simply. And I probably never will. That relationship died when she chose to poison me. But I've reconciled with myself with what happened with the life I have now. That's the reconciliation that matters. 8 years after the poisoning, I woke up one morning and realized my throat didn't hurt. The chronic pain that had been my constant companion since Melissa first poured drain cleaner into my feeding tube had finally miraculously faded. My voice was still damaged, still raspy and weak, but the pain was gone. I told Robert over breakfast and he cried, "You're really healing. Finally, completely healing. Physically, at least. Emotionally, I think I'll always carry scars." Scars aren't weaknesses. They're proof of survival. 9 years after the poisoning, I spoke at a maximum security women's prison as part of a rehabilitation program. I didn't know Melissa was incarcerated there until I walked into the room and saw her sitting in the back row. She looked older, harder, but also somehow more at peace. We made eye contact, and she nodded slightly. I nodded back. No words, no drama, just two people acknowledging each other's existence. After my talk, she waited until everyone else had left, then approached me cautiously. "Thank you for coming here, for doing this work. You're helping a lot of women who made bad choices. I'm trying to help them make better choices going forward. Are you happy, Mom? Are you okay?" The question surprised me. "Yes. I'm married to a wonderful man. I live with my best friend. I run a foundation that saves lives. I'm as okay as someone can be after what I went through." "I'm glad. You deserve happiness. So does everyone. Even people who've done terrible things if they genuinely change. Am I genuinely changed, or am I just pretending again? I don't know, Melissa. And honestly, it doesn't matter to me anymore. Your journey is yours. Mine is mine. They don't intersect. They used to. They used to. But that was a different life, a different relationship, a different us. That version of us doesn't exist anymore." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "Can I ask one favor? Not for me, for you. Can you let yourself fully heal? Can you stop carrying the weight of wondering if you failed me? You didn't. I failed myself. I know that now. It took years, but I know." "Good. That's all I wanted to say. Have a good life, Mom. You earned it." She walked away, and I let her go. No tearful reunion, no dramatic forgiveness, just two people releasing each other from expectations that could never be met. 10 years after the poisoning, I stood in the same courtroom where Melissa had been sentenced, but this time I was there to receive an award from the state for my work in elder abuse prevention. Judge Reynolds, now retired, presented it to me. Margaret Henderson has taken unimaginable trauma and transformed it into a force for good, she said. Her foundation has protected thousands of vulnerable adults. Her advocacy has changed laws. Her courage has inspired a movement. She is proof that even the worst human actions can't destroy the best of human spirit. I accepted the award with my raspy voice and scarred throat and damaged trust. But I also accepted it with hard-won wisdom, genuine friendships, meaningful purpose, and the knowledge that I'd survived something designed to kill me. More than survived, I'd thrived. Patricia and Robert stood as I approached the podium. My foundation staff filled the gallery. The prosecutor, Linda Martinez, was there, along with Dr. Chen and Detective Walsh. All the people who'd helped me through the darkest time of my life, all here to celebrate not what had happened to me, but what I'd done with it afterward. 10 years ago, I said into the microphone, my voice rough but strong. I lay in a hospital bed with drain cleaner burning through my throat, wondering if I'd survive the night. My daughter had tried to murder me. My voice was destroyed. My trust was shattered. My future looked hopeless. I paused, looking at the faces in the crowd. But I did survive. And in the decades since, I've learned that survival isn't enough. You have to choose what kind of survivor you'll be, bitter or better, broken or rebuilt, defined by what happened or by what you do afterward. Another pause. I chose to rebuild. I chose to use my pain to prevent others' pain. I chose to let my damaged voice speak for those who have no voice. And I chose to believe that even the deepest betrayal can't destroy your capacity for love, trust, and connection if you're willing to fight for it. I held up the award. This isn't for me. It's for every elder abuse survivor who's finding the courage to speak up. It's for every caregiver who's choosing to protect instead of exploit. It's for every person who's decided that trauma doesn't have to be the end of their story. We're all survivors here, and we're all proof that evil doesn't get the last word. We do. The applause was thunderous, but more than that, it was affirming. I'd taken what Melissa meant to destroy and built something indestructible. She'd tried to silence me, and I'd found a voice louder than the one I'd lost. She'd tried to kill me, and I'd discovered a life more meaningful than the one I'd had before. That night, I sat with Robert and Patricia in our living room, the award on the mantel, just talking about ordinary things. Movies we wanted to see, Patricia's upcoming doctor appointment, Robert's daughter's wedding next month. Normal life. Beautiful, boring, precious, normal life. Do you ever regret it? Patricia asked suddenly, fighting back, testifying everything that came after. I thought about Melissa in prison, about the daughter I'd lost, about the relationship that could never be repaired. I thought about my scarred throat and damaged voice. I thought about the nightmares I still sometimes had waking up, choking, feeling poison burn through my system. But I also thought about the thousands of people my foundation had helped, the laws we'd changed, the lives we'd saved, the meaning I'd found in suffering. No, I said finally. I don't regret it. I survived. I testified. I rebuilt. And I'm still here, still fighting, still refusing to let what happened define who I am. That's not something to regret. That's something to celebrate. Robert squeezed my hand. Patricia smiled through tears. And I realized that this moment right here was worth every painful step of the journey. Melissa had tried to take everything from me, but in the end, she'd only taken the parts of my life that didn't matter, the parts that did the love and purpose and connection, those I'd built myself from scratch. And no one, not even the daughter who'd tried to murder me, could ever take those away.